we're in a collaborative where we're trying to get community and police together, for police to understand the challenges in the community and for the community to understand that a police officer wants to go home at night. And so we have worked aggressively on this, and also the leaders in our community have done a terrific job in terms of trying to make sure we have justice and change.
That was Ohio Governor and Republican presidential candidate John Kasich on the Kelly File, weighing in on criminal justice reform and a grand jury's decision not to press charges against the two Cleveland officers involved in the deadly shooting of 12-year-old Tamir Rice in November of 2014. But the city's mayor now confirming a new administrative review examining the case from start to finish. This case is just one of the many that has made criminal justice an issue in the 2016 presidential campaign. Joining me now is Republican pollster Lisa Boothe and political commentator Lisa Durden. I will be identifying you ladies by your last name since I got two Lisas. Let's start with you first, Lisa Boothe. This has become a major point in this election. How do you see it impacting the race as we stand today? There are candidates calling for change.
Well, and we have, and it has impacted the 2016 race. And what we've seen specifically from the left with people like Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders is they're using movements like the Black Lives Matter movement to pander to the African-American vote. And look, the Tamir Rice case is incredibly sad. No parent should have to bury their child. But that doesn't mean that these police officers did anything criminal in nature. And the Black Lives Matter movement is really trying to push what is a false narrative of somehow police officers are inherently bad. And the reality is, if you look at Cleveland, there's been 100 homicides this year. If you look at Baltimore, they're facing record high murder rates. If you look at a city like Chicago, there were 12 homicides last week during the Christmas week alone, but they don't want to talk about that because they're exploiting the victims in the cases that try to fit the narrative that they want to form.
Lisa Durden, do you see it that way?
Cops should not shoot first and ask questions later. That's not community policing, that's vigilantism. And the last time I noticed, that was against the law. This senseless, brutal assassination of a 12-year-old child, Tamir Rice, by this police officer, murderer, should not just concern the black community, it should outrage the nation, because this could be your child. As we all know, bullets don't have names on them. And no, the Black Lives Matter movement is not trying to make all cops out to be bad cops or criminals. It's there to point out how bad cops are bad cops. So there's no pandering and narrative that's being crafted and created by the Black Lives Matter movement.
But let's take this back to the election, and specifically talking to you, Lisa Durden, because I want your take on this, because we have seen some Republican-led states, South Carolina, for example, adopting changes like mandating some police officers in their state to wear body cameras. We have seen change take place. Where does this fall on party lines? Changes that we are seeing and the response as far as political parties are concerned?
First of all, we know that body cameras are not necessarily going to work well, because as we know in the Sandra Bland case, they altered the footage. The next thing is we need to pass legislation. All of the candidates coming out need to stand somewhere. And what they did in California over the summer to ban grand juries is what every politician should be discussing for every single state, because we know that once you do that, you force these half-baked prosecutors to do their job, which is to prosecute on behalf of the victim. And I'm going to say this,
Lisa Boothe, I got to get Lisa Boothe back in here, because Lisa, how are you seeing the Republican candidates polling on this? Are they doing well with the criminal justice issue?
Well, I think you'd be surprised about the amount of Americans that are worried about the unrest we're seeing in the country. And quite frankly, a lot of it's being stoked by our president right now. And look, what Lisa is saying is actually not substantiated by facts. The Washington Post did a year-long study. The National Review did a great review of that study. And what it found is, you know, 3/4 of the incidents where there was some sort of fatal force involved, 3/4 of those incidents were police officers actually defending themselves or protecting someone else. If you look at white police officers where there was a killing of an unarmed black man, less than 4% of those were the total fatal shootings by police officers. And, you know, so those numbers just aren't there to substantiate that fact. And the reality is the Black Lives Matter movement is rooted from the riots that took place after the Mike Brown case, which, if you remember, both forensic evidence and witness accounts found that Mike Brown was actually charging the police officer and going for the gun. So it's rooted in a false narrative based off of false facts, and people should just be honest about it.
All right, well, the Black Lives Matter movement has been firmly injected into the campaign trail. We do know that it is having a reaction from the candidates, and we're going to continue to watch that.
And Bernie Sanders is one of the main
he's acknowledged them.
People who stand behind it, which I'm enjoying that fact.
We're talking about tens of millions of police encounters
for the discussion.
and only a handful of
for joining us tonight.